Good afternoon, good morning, good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Chamber Connect series. Question today is, are we still relevant to advocate change? Some will say, yes, we are. Some will say as chambers, no, we're not. And some will literally shrug their shoulders because they really don't know where they stand on the topic of advocacy anymore. In the beginning of chamber history, we were like the nursery rhyme, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, where we were the hands holding the chambers of commerce, the government, the private sector, all stakeholders working towards a goal of improving and solidifying and supporting our respective economies. We were the ears where we heard the problems from our respective stakeholders, and we were the voice representing the chambers of commerce, representing our members, stakeholder member companies, as well as working with our chamber network. But today, some will say we're possibly like the three naughty monkeys. We hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. We hope our panelists today are going to help us to balance out where are we, before or after, or still confused. Have we let others take the limelight, or have we been too slow to keep up with the needs of our stakeholders when it comes to advocacy? Today, we've got two leading chambers of commerce who are frontline and center in executing advocacy and seeing the fruits of their labor, as well as the pitfalls that they've had to go through. We would like to thank ICC, World Chambers Federation, for their continued support in helping us to raise awareness of the Chamber Connect series and reminding ourselves that we have been working together with ICC WCF on such platforms to curate the content for the 12th World Chambers Congress, which will be taking place here in Dubai in November 2021. Key interactive elements to remind ourselves of today's webinar. All delegates can register or pose a question to the chambers and our moderator using the Ask a Question dialogue at the bottom of your screen. There is also a dialogue bottom to the right-hand side where you have the opportunity to network with your fellow chambers of commerce who are present today, one-to-one or within the whole group setting. And don't forget, at the top right-hand corner of your screen, you're able to download the last post-show report for our last webinar, which was focused on membership, as well as downloading the Chamber's new norm reports. Before we get started, I would like to now introduce His Excellency Hamad Bouamim, Chair of ICC World Chambers Federation and CEO and President of Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Leila. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the ICC World Chamber Federation, it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome you all to the third session of the Chamber Connect series. The objective of this series, as some of you are aware, is creating channels of collaborations, knowledge sharing, and constructive dialogue between chambers of commerce around the world in issues that of great interest to chambers of commerce. Also, we are trying to shape up the agenda of the 12th World Chambers Congress that will take place later on this year here in Dubai. Looking forward, of course, to this event, and our chamber is still relevant. It's a big subject. And from my perspective, as all of you are aware, all chambers of commerce share a similar mission, which is to support and protect the interests of their members. And policy advocacy is a big part of this mission, which has become even more important in the COVID era, when companies are facing new challenges and environment of constant change. We believe that this is a crucial subject to chambers of commerce, and it's crucial that they stay in tune with the evolving needs of their members so they can stay relevant and advocate issues for creating a favorable business environment where these companies can operate and actually grow. Again, it's a big subject, and I don't believe there is one size fits all, but definitely there are areas where we can learn from each other. So I look forward to hearing from my colleagues about their views on this important subject. I just want to conclude talking also briefly about the World Chamber Congress, which will be organized by Dubai Chamber in cooperations and collaboration with the ICC World Chamber Federation under the theme Generation Next Chambers 4.0, which is a big subject for us in the ICC and in the World Chamber Federation. And I believe this is a very relevant subject for all chambers of commerce. We're hoping that this Congress will be joined by more than 1,000 participants from chambers of commerce from more than 100 countries around the world, who will get great opportunity to leverage the Expo 2020 Dubai platform. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I would like to thank you all for your participation, and I look forward to welcoming you all in Dubai in the upcoming Congress. See you in November, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would now like to introduce Vincent O'Brien, Director of ICC UAE, who will be moderating our discussions today. Over to you, Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leila, and welcome all, welcome everyone. Chambers of Commerce have been central part of the business fabric for so long. I myself, I've been involved in international trade for maybe too long, having worked in more than 100 countries from Macedonia to Mongolia, and chambers of commerce in each country have always been a passenger on this long trade, this journey of creating commerce and economic development. Well, a chamber, when you look at it, is a room, a special room, and a chamber of commerce is a room or a venue or a platform where stakeholders in commerce and business can discuss, disagree, agree, find consensus, and advocate for change. Change that will enable commerce with an effort to make business work for everyone, every day, everywhere. And I hope those words are familiar to you. Well, today we have the right people here in our room on your screen for our fireside chat on the role of chambers in this modern interconnected world. Dr. Alaa Ezz, Secretary General, Federation Egyptian Chamber of Commerce, and Aebhric McGibney, Director of Public and International Affairs, Dublin Chamber of Commerce. So getting underway, Aebhric, just a few words to give our viewers a flavor about you and all about Dublin Chamber of Commerce. Aebhric.
Well, Dublin Chamber is one of the oldest chambers of commerce in the world, actually. It was set up in 1783. And if you look at our Articles of Association from that time, they stand up pretty well to the test of time. People were concerned then about, obviously, business concerns, but they were also concerned about the wider environment in which their business operated and more social concerns. I'd say since then, we've landed on environment and diversity and sort of the UN sustainability goals, but our vision which unites us is about Dublin being a place which is globally renowned for its quality of life, its resilience, and its economic vibrancy. And that's the cloak, if you like, compared to other organizations against which we all meet. So we network, we lobby, and we service members in service of that vision. And that's the bond that unites us.
Thanks, Aebhric. Clear and concise as always. And Dr. Alaa, your perspective on the chambers in Egypt.
Okay, as Federation of Chambers, we have 27 provincial chambers that we support. So our role as Federation is mostly advocacy, actually, plus international cooperation. And when it comes to services, we just structure the services that will be delivered by our members. We have 5 million member companies in the 27 chambers. So it's a big task for us as Federation, but we're more focused international and advocacy.
Advocacy. Okay. Well, as I said, the right people in the right place on the right screen at the right time. So historically, lobbying and advocacy, as mentioned by both of you, have always been core activities for chambers. But is this still the case today? Are chambers getting disintermediated in a crowded commercial ecosystem? And Dr. Alaa, seeing as you brought up this point, I'll proceed with you on this one.
First, advocacy has been a core business for us for over half a century. However, there has been a major change. We're now moving from being reactive, where we're solving problems, to being proactive, where preventing problems. And here is where the role has changed tremendously. And maybe in Egypt, it was even more prominent because 2011, 2013, we had two revolutions with curfew. So you can imagine the nightmare that business was in. COVID, we were using the experience of 2011 and 2013 to prevent having the problems we faced during that period, and we succeeded. Egypt is the only country in the Euro-Mediterranean, Africa, Middle East that had a GDP of 2.4%, thanks to the lobbying we have done, enacting presidential decrees, prime ministerial decrees that prevented the problems from happening. The drawback is we did not mediate what we're doing to our members, and this is the weakness of the advocacy drives of most chambers. But here, when it's public-private partnership, sometimes you have to leave the credit to governments.
Sure, Dr. Alaa, talk about being proactive, and Aebhric, your take on relevant. Are we still relevant as we were before?
Well, lobbying is a core function of Dublin Chamber, and it's certainly an important reason for members joining. I think you're right that there are increasingly more sectoral groups that represent individual interests. We certainly see that in Ireland and in Dublin. If you're a restaurant sector at the moment representing restaurants, with COVID, there are huge challenges for that sector. And that means that those sectors, they tend to be united very strongly on one issue, but they don't represent a comprehensive view from a government perspective. If you're receiving lobbying, you know, the restaurants will say that, won't they? Or and by the way, restaurants is membership, but it's the comprehensive view that we represent. We represent the views of all industry, and I think if government is looking for a concise view, which I think they are, and as evidenced by our own lobbying efforts, then they want to know that you've already had that chat between the sectors and between the different sizes of firm already, so you're representing a single comprehensive view. So if I go back to the last recession in 2008 for Ireland, we had small businesses complaining about the banking sector, and the banking sector, look, it wasn't us, and there were, you know, the answer is somewhere in the middle, and that's our sweet spot, if you like, somewhere in the middle, representing a comprehensive view from industry and enterprise.
Well, that's your sweet spot, Aebhric, and at least it's very encouraging. But let's see what our viewers think about this. So let's see what our viewers have to say. So turning to our viewers, we're going to bring up a poll question, our first poll question in a series of poll questions to engage you. And so our poll question should appear on the screen any moment. And we're looking for your view regarding: is lobbying and advocacy still core services for your chamber of commerce? So hopefully our poll question should appear. I'm still looking for a poll question, but I don't see anything yet.
Maybe you can read it, Vincent.
Yeah, well, let's go through. Well, the question is: are lobbying and advocacy core service activities for my chamber, which of course is the chamber of the viewers? And of course, the answers are yes, no, or I am not so sure. I am not sure.
Vincent, I can see from the chat that the survey is live, so we'll be getting the results shortly.
Oh, so, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so for option A, yes, which is core services or activities, it's very good to see that we have 74% yes and 9% no, and so it's very much a positive outcome, very positive outcome. So it's a positive outcome, but you know, looking at the numbers, it looks like there are challenges, but chambers remain relevant and mainstream. So moving on, with so much of the business landscape changing, can chambers still be the voice of the business community? Are we really able to help our breadth of membership, our large-scale companies, multinationals, startups in the same way as we used to before? Or is there change? So, Dr. Alaa.
The answer is yes. Most of what we're doing in the lobbying and advocacy side is supporting everybody. Small, micro, large, multinationals, all of them benefit when you improve ease doing business, when you solve tax problems, and so forth. However, when it comes to the small and micro, there are a lot of specific things because our countries, or most countries actually, this is a starting business for all of us. So practically, what do they need and how can we interact with them, especially that they're not yet members? This is a key question. And we innovate, we create incubators, we create services, we see what they miss. In Egypt, for example, we lobbied to enact a law for micro and small enterprises and establish an institution for them, chaired by the Prime Minister. So we did the advocacy. But again, our problem is we do not mediate that it's us who have done it to them. This is the mistake of most chambers. We advocate, we lobby, we solve problems, but we do not mediate the message.
So, Aebhric, are we doing as good a job as we were doing in the past? Are we as relevant when you compare the past to what we are actually doing now?
Well, I think just to pick up on what Dr. Alaa said, in the first instance, lobbying is about asking someone else to do something for you and taking credit for it. And that is a challenge. Not every chamber they might be good at lobbying, but success is many fathers. So as soon as something is achieved and government changes a law, everyone says, well, that was us. So we spend a lot of time making sure our communications with member companies are effective, that we're both listening in terms of surveys or focus groups, but then we're reporting back on what's been happening from a lobbying point of view. It occurs to me also that the breadth of membership is also a challenge. I'm always looking for a nemesis, Vincent. You know, I'm always looking for the bad guy that we can have common cause against. Most recently, I think for a lot of firms, the biggest challenge is how to deal with flexible and remote working.
Yes.
The world has changed. Government is regulating in Ireland on this topic, and everyone has the same challenge: the health and safety issues, the insurance issues. How do you accommodate get some degree of remote working, and how do you get people back into the office? Because we all want to get back to networking and business travel as well. So we have a common cause there, and I think that's the bit that I'm always looking out for with my ear to the ground, to find that one thing that everyone is really worried about, and then we push that hard.
Well, that one thing I'm sure is really difficult to actually find, but as you say, it all has to be results oriented, what we're actually achieving. So this sounds like a good time to bring up our second poll question. So it sounds like a good time to ask you, our viewers, if chambers are remaining effective in what we do in terms of advocacy. So our poll question should appear, but I'm going to read out our poll question as well, just to get you focused on it. So our poll question will appear, and the question basically is directly to you, our viewers: are chambers remaining effective in business advocacy? Or, I asked the other part of the question, or are we contributing to red tape or any kind of tape that may be holding back the system and holding back the business? Are chambers still effective in business advocacy, or are we contributing to red tape? Effective, not effective, or you are not so sure? And let's see how the poll should be live now, and let's see how the results actually come in on this particular question. I think it's a good one. I think it's a really good one. So here, looking on the chat. Okay, the poll is live. We'll give you another 10 seconds to give us your contribution. And very good. So I'm very happy to share with you that 61% believe that the chambers are remaining effective. 15%, not, okay, and contributing to red tape. And again, 24% not so sure. So it does highlight that this is really, really an important topic. So, well, I guess to summarize, on balance, remaining effective. So let's be optimistic. This is encouraging. But let's delve a little deeper into the ecosystem. Many entities in the world today are replicating chambers, or should I say chambers services. The chambers were the great business connector in the past, the great center for advocacy, but should we be worried about these changes? You know, what is our still current unique selling point as chambers of commerce? What sets us apart? Dr. Alaa, what sets us apart in your view?
First, having competition is not a problem. That actually makes us standing on our toes and try to improve our services. We're public law, so we have mandatory membership, but maintaining the members as part of what we do is very important. Okay. Chambers, whether Anglo-Saxon system or continental system, both of them, they still have a major competitive edge. First, they have the history, they have the know-how, they have the experience, and more important, they have regional and international, like ICC organizations, where we exchange experience, where we replicate what's being done in other chambers. And the World Congress that will be held in Dubai is an example of where we all meet, we see who's doing what, how, then we improve our services. Other competitors, if I may use this word, they do not have the same edge. In the same time, maybe they're more noisy, like the example that was mentioned, the restaurants, but by the end of the day, they don't deliver. Not to forget that we as chambers, we look at things from the macro. So governments listen to us. We balance between the interests of different sectors, the interest of the economy at large, where other competitors, they look at their very narrow interest, which normally governments don't listen to.
That's really interesting, Dr. Alaa, to believe that in this day and age, we still have the unique position, we still have the ear of the stakeholders including the government, which is so important to change. And Aebhric, in the context of the Dublin Chamber of Commerce, what do you see as unique in what the Chambers is actually providing to your members and, of course, the broader economy in turn?
Well, I think Dr. Alaa has covered a lot of it in terms of we have reached down at local level. So we've got that ground up knowledge. Then we collaborate at a national level with Chambers Ireland, the national body here, bringing together all the feedback from all the chambers. And to pick up on another point, one of the things that we try and do with government is we push on a government commitment to sort of regulate for red tape for small businesses in particular, to proof legislation to make sure that EU laws are not overly bureaucratic. And then I do think we value those international connections, both the ICC and other informal settings. A lot of times, for example, we compare notes with international city chambers, and there's a group, an informal group, that just compares notes because there's a lot of detail that you get into about transport systems, that everyone has those common issues if you're a city chamber. And then I think stakeholder relations are really important. So for us, our goal is to maintain strong relations with government and with the key officials, the key politicians, and bring them in front of our members to be accountable to them. So yesterday, for example, I was interviewing the leader of the opposition in Ireland, Mary Lou MacDonald, and members had a chance to put questions to her about her views about what she would do if she was in government. And that really is important, to bring government to be accountable to members. And that's something we strive to do quite a lot.
That's a great example, Aebhric. You really have the ear of the government, and actually being able to facilitate business and communication and change is a unique feature. And both of you agree, being part of a global network that comes together is really, really amazing. Nobody can compete with this. But I just got to talk a little bit about the pandemic. Because I think it's relevant. Okay, in times of crisis, we saw during, let's say, the early stages of the pandemic, chambers were very popular, a solid place to turn to as a consolidated voice of business. Members looked to the chambers for support as a foundation pillar of business community. But that's life, okay? However, when times are good, okay, and things are moving well and the economy's gone up, we don't seem to get the same attention or carry the same weight. We don't seem to have the same value propositions. So basically my question, and I'll go to Dr. Alaa, is the needs of our members are very different when it's business as usual or at a time of stress that we experience. What's your perspective on that contention, Dr. Alaa?
Like I mentioned earlier, there are two major important things. First, we no longer are reactive, we are proactive.
Okay.
So we forecast the disasters that are coming, whether it's something international, global prices going up, freight prices going up, problems draft somewhere which will affect prices.
Yep.
So we forecast this, we notify governments, we notify our members. So we help the economy by being proactive. So this is from one perspective. From another perspective, in times of crisis, there is nobody but chambers that carries the burden. For example, during the pandemic, like you rightfully said, we had meetings from the head of state going down to ministers, prime minister, and we enacted in the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, 3 presidential decrees, 4 decrees by both the prime minister and another by the governor of central bank, 38 ministerial decrees to prevent problems, to make easy access to finance, to make small businesses operate, to delay payment of all government dues. So we did our job very early because we knew what's coming. And this is actually the role, and we notified all our friendly, through our global network, all our chambers, what we were doing so they can replicate. And this is, again, the power of the chambers.
The power of the chambers. And Aebhric, I know at the early stages of the pandemic, the visibility of Dublin Chamber of Commerce was phenomenal. So that's kind of a celebration of what you did. It's really an accolade. But was it also that, well, at that time, you were felt to be useful? Sorry, but in other times, maybe you're not so useful and you're just a day-to-day part of the fabric. What's your take on that?
I think it's a nature of business to be optimistic, and when things are busy, if your business is busy, if the economy is booming, you've less time, you're less interested, you're focusing on your existing customers, you're not looking for new customers, and you're just busy doing the job. Chambers are generally, in my view, counter-cyclical, because it's when you need us that we're still here. So people, if they take a long run view, and most of our members do, they know they need to stay in for the good and the bad, because they need to be there for the bad. And then in the bad, you talked about COVID. Yes, the government introduced a whole range of business supports, but and the public sector in Ireland responded very quickly. But those supports had to be fine-tuned. So you quickly introduce a measure, but then that doesn't work for me, or what about this circumstance? What about that? And we spent a large part of the first few weeks sort of feeding back from members different nuances to legislation. And now at the end of COVID, I suppose the other thing that chambers are very good at is everyone wants to know where we're going back to. We know we're not going back to the same place. We're going somewhere new. Part of that is about remote working, for example, but also challenges like sustainability and resilience are becoming more and more important. So we are beginning to show, in terms of leadership, where we think government, where we think legislation, and where we think best practice in business is going. I think that's a real value, because we can lead. We can't just follow all the time. We need to represent our members' views, but we also need to show them the light.
Yeah, that's very helpful from both of you. But I just want to push you just a little bit on this, because it's just so important. Let's be maybe a little bit more specific. Like, can I ask you, both of you, but Dr. Alaa, how are each of you, how are you, Dr. Alaa, and your chambers able to support your customer base through the pandemic? Maybe just one or two specific initiatives that we can attribute.
Okay, one simple initiative, like all our countries, tourism sector was killed during the pandemic. So what we did is we made a campaign, a global campaign, have an office in Paradise on the beach. We lobbied with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to have a 1-year visa permitting work. And we started promoting it. We ended up with about 250,000 permanent residents in Egyptian hotels that were supposed to close down completely, and we distributed them on all the hotels. So this is how we supported one sector in a very proactive method, through lobbying, promotion, using our network, using our services. Another example is postponing all payments, whether loans to banks, 6 months by a central bank decree, and postponing all payments to the government by presidential decree, so social insurance, taxes, and everything. So small businesses could still survive. So these are examples of what chambers do, and nobody else can do it.
Wonderful, Dr. Alaa. Both very practical, but the first one was really creative. I must commend you on that. That's really fantastic. And Aebhric, maybe one or two specifics, you know.
Well, I'm an economist by trade, not a psychologist, but we offer group therapy to members. That was one of our innovations. Instead of blasting out event-based information, we ran a lot of focus groups online with about 20 people in a room for an hour and a bit, and everyone gets to talk and on a particular topic. What are you doing about this? How are you handling this problem? What are your staff saying? How are you responding? So we ran focus groups, which members really valued because they got to have their say, but also got to learn from their peers. So we weren't telling them what was going on. They were learning from their peers. Another example, I suppose, getting out of COVID is about going back to the long run problems. And I mentioned sustainability, and I'd like to talk about what we're trying to do there is train companies. We've introduced a new service launched during the pandemic, providing sort of leadership, showing how companies have gone green, but also providing practical training for companies, because they know when they come back, one of the new policy sort of trends at international and political level is going to be about sustainability. Funding is going to chase sustainable businesses. Companies, when they're procuring, will want businesses to demonstrate how they've gone green. So we're trying to show companies how to do that.
Well, Aebhric, I think if there's any country in the world that can fly the flag of going green, I think it's the Emerald Isle. So I think that's a wonderful story. But you know what? Going back to the point for a moment you made earlier, like about the chambers moving with the time and the chambers being innovative and coming up with new solutions. That the creative examples you've just shared show us that we are moving, we have advanced, we are actually looking to the future. But now wanting to get even a little bit more specific, in particular, Dr. Alaa, as I recall, you participated in a previous World Chambers Congress and highlighted the work of the Egyptian Chamber did to reform the economy after, as you mentioned earlier, the 2011 revolution. Clearly a serious and a challenging time. Your work outlined how the private and public sector came together to create a new economic development plan. In that context, can you tell us about the role of the chambers, the role the chambers played at this instrumental point in time?
Okay, we decided that if you can't win them, then you lobby to join them. Okay. So what we did is we brought all stakeholders, not only chambers and its members, but also civil society as well as government, where we decided to draft an economic constitution. Simply, governments can change, but this is the economic plan for the country. This was when I was in Doha during the World Chamber Congress, and this is what I have presented, which was just the first step of the process, not the implementation. It was just the first part, doing this constitution, drafting it. Then what we lobbied for, first we lobbied to be part of the Committee of 50 drafting the new constitution of Egypt. And this was a nightmare because we fought to put private sector-led economy as an opening sentence in the constitution. This wasn't an easy task with all the opposition that we did have. Then we lobbied, and we're still successful in that. Today I have about 100 MPs who are board members of my different chambers. So we have our power within the parliament to lobby. We have a couple of ministers even from the boards of the chambers. They're no longer on the board, but they're ex-board members. And we started translating all these economic constitution outlines into Egyptian legislations. We managed to change about 200 laws of Egypt from the day the new constitution was enacted until today, by attending all the committees in the parliament, lobbying in the parliament to make sure that these new laws are modern, are compliant with international standards. And here I would be grateful and thankful to chambers, because we contacted chambers to give us their laws, and we did what we can say cross-legislative or cross-constitutional analysis, and this was the tool we lobbied with in the parliament and with the government. So actually, we walked the talk and implemented.
Wow, that's a wonderful story, Dr. Alaa, how you took power, you empowered your members, and you took that power to become an initiator of change, and really must be commended. And now moving, I guess, closer to my own home, Aebhric, Dublin Chamber, as I recall, submitted to the World Chambers Congress to the competition a few years ago, highlighting a pretty challenging task, a momentous task, as it was described at the time, for Dublin City Council, Dublin Chamber, the central government. Basically, the private and public sector faced an enormous task. And that task, as I recall, was to activate Dublin as a destination for work and play, to set it apart against its peers. And I know it was a success story, but I'm going to put it to you maybe to describe what was happening at the Chambers level at that time, who was steering that project, and how you facilitated the change and the positive result.
Well, we call this initiative Activating Dublin, and it came about because at the time we're going back to the last recession. Who would have known we'd have so many recessions in a decade? But whereby government, remember, Ireland ended up being supported by the IMF, so it was a very precarious situation for the country and the economy as a whole. The government that took power had to raise taxes, had to cut spending. It was a very dark background, so they didn't have the normal tools of government to boost spending or to help. And government ministers, the government in power, said, look, how can you help us? They called on business. They said, look, what can you do? An initiative led by our president at the time and the chamber brought together the head of the Department of Finance, which is the key function in government departments, or one of the key functions, and the head of local government in the city, Dublin City Council, and we met to kind of find common cause. And we were very lucky in that we had the pro bono support of McKinsey at the time, who were very keen to facilitate and give back something to the community in response to that call from government. And we came up with a number of initiatives. The idea was to pilot initiatives always, to look to mainstream them later on. So, for example, we did some work with some of the big tech companies in Dublin, with Facebook and with PayPal, and with Google, to do a crash course on how to sell online. That course content helped a lot of companies in the pilot, and then that course content became mainstreamed. It became the curriculum for a government approved course. Another idea that we focused on was to help startups in the city, and what we wanted was a commissioner for startups, somebody to remember. A lot of companies in the startup sector, they don't have a lot of money, and they're meeting in coffee shops and they don't really have any premises. So the idea was to rally them around a single figure who they could talk to and could represent their industry. So we had great levels of cooperation, but I suppose I have to confess that when things are bad, people rise to the challenge. So but in the boom time, again, that network was no longer needed. Just before the COVID recession, Ireland's unemployment rate was just over 4%, so we were back at full employment. So the Avengers were disbanded, if you like. We no longer needed, but those relationships remain. So we have good relations with both local government and with national government, and that allows us then to seed in ideas again and to be innovative and to listen to what government is saying and what local government is saying. So there's a lot of cooperation, but maybe it's not so formal. I mean, I suppose if COVID had let us, maybe we would have met again under Activating Dublin, but of course it wasn't quite the same way.
Sure, and the success of that initiative, I think it's known all over the world and has really put Ireland once again on the map. And I'm just looking at one or two questions that are coming in. And just a quick one I'll put to the two of you, because in case I miss it at the end, because it's an important one. And it is, what about the importance of social media to your particular initiatives? Not in general questions about the importance of social media, but in your activities, in your work, in your advocacy work, I guess in particular, the role of social media for you at this point in time. Dr. Alaa, if I may pick up on the question.
Social media, whether we like it or not, became an important tool for communication. whether we're talking about our children, our members, the layperson. It is best, cheapest, easiest way of reaching out to everybody. And we've seen this in 2011. Actually, the revolution in Egypt was initiated by social media. So we grasped that this is the tool of the future. So we embarked utilizing social media as our best way for not only being one way communicating with our members, but it's the best way also for doing surveys, for receiving opinions, receiving requests. We have poll stations for different issues, and social media is the key instrument that we're using.
Well, Dr. Alaa, I would agree with you, maybe 95%, but not 100%. I sometimes find I get distracted, but maybe that's my weakness. Okay, I need to be more disciplined in what I do. But yes, reaching out to people and actually sharing messages and actually promoting events itself, it really, really works. And Aebhric, our viewers are very interested in your view on the social media and the role it plays in Dublin Chamber of Commerce in your work.
Well, we adopted Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn in April 2009, so we were early adopters, and we kind of picked those. I think hopefully we were well informed, but we were also lucky. We use some for broadcast. They're used for different purposes. B2C for Facebook to a certain degree, Twitter for kind of the news feed and promoting events and even conversations online. But I think LinkedIn was something we used as quite a tool. We had closed groups on LinkedIn for a number of years, whereby if somebody wanted to join the chamber, we're funded purely by members, not by government. So if somebody wanted to join, they could see there was a discussion going on LinkedIn in this closed group. If they wanted in, they had to contact us to get in to have that conversation. And so we used to facilitate that kind of conversation on LinkedIn. We do it now also through direct communications. But if I just may say, in terms of the wider question around media, I think there is an issue here about how media is used. You know, we strive to have good, strong, direct relations with government and get change from within. If you're shouting in the media about something to look good in front of your members, that can be a bad thing because you're also upsetting the person you're trying to lobby. So for us, sometimes it's about having the conversation within and then directly communicating back to your membership base. I think, you know, there's a balance there for all those things, but you've got to be careful about how you use media. But yes, they're here to stay, as Dr. Alaa said, and, you know, they're here with us and we need to use them effectively.
Yeah, I see Dr. Alaa smiling, so I think you kind of hit a nerve with him. And you know, sometimes you feel with the social media, I feel there's quality and then there's quantity. And sometimes it takes a bit of time to be distinguishing where you're getting the quality from and where you're getting the quantity from. So, but that's kind of a debate for another day. But actually, guys, the interest in your two stories is very is amazing. A lot of people are asking questions, and so I want to go back to your stories, Dr. Alaa, back to 2011 and the economic reform. You know, obviously, you mobilized a lot of resources. So it's just a question coming in from the audience, from our viewers, going back to that time, and what were the biggest challenges or blockages? And I know you could tell a whole story in this, but one or two, what were the biggest challenges or blockages to your success story at that particular time? And well, it's not asked, but it may be an indication of how you got over them, if you please.
No, it's very, very simple. The blockage that we had was very, very simple. Normally, all of us, when we advocate, you have the government to advocate, you have the parliament to advocate. You know your target for the advocacy.
Okay.
When you have a revolution, you don't know who's running the country. So you don't know actually whom to advocate. You didn't have a parliament. Then you had a lower house that was dissolved. Then you had the SCAF, the military running the country. Then it's a government. Then you had government staying for 10 days. This is not, normally they stay for 10 years. So you're talking about, you didn't know whom to talk to. This was the biggest challenge. So you had to innovate and design what you're doing that it is addressed to every potential decision maker that might pop up who did not know yet. So this was a big challenge.
That was That's an amazing answer, Dr. Alaa. So I guess now you're proposing more evolution than revolution as we go forward. So that's an amazing answer. And Aebhric, back to you. In that success story, clear success story, you know, what were kind of the biggest blockages you had in tipping this over from a challenge actually and turning it into an opportunity and then a success?
Well, I think Ireland is a small country, and Dublin is the capital city of that small country, and about, you know, a quarter of the population live in Dublin. And the core part of the city is actually quite small. So our offices are around the corner from both the Parliament and the main government, the Prime Minister's office. And at the other end of the block is the national body, Chambers Ireland. So we're all together, and actually relationships are key, I think, and that's I mean, you know, you can bump into somebody on the street in that scenario and have a quick casual conversation, not a formal meeting. And then that's reinforced by your brand and your reputation and your behavior in formal meetings. So we take those relationships seriously. We don't criticize willy-nilly. If we have a problem with something the government is doing, we tell them directly. We don't tell them in the media in the first instance. You can always escalate. And I think the thing I learned from activating Dublin is you know, just that understanding and those relationships. If you know where everyone else is coming from, it really helps to cooperate. And to take up Dr. Alaa's point, we didn't have the same circumstance, but we do try and hedge our bets. We always keep relations both with government and the opposition, and all the parties that are in Parliament, because you never know who will be in government next. So, you know, those relationships extend not just to the politicians, but also to the public servants. You want to you know, keep those relationships live and open. I think that's the most important thing. And Dublin is small enough that's possible. Literally, we could be bumping into each other, Vincent, and hopefully in Dubai we will.
I know we will. I have no doubt that we will. But you know, you're kind of highlighting something for me that is a key strength for Chambers and for ICC is we've developed something over a long time that we're able to communicate and develop relationships where we can argue in a very friendly way. Now, sometimes a heated friendly way, a heated dynamic way, but that's how you get to good results. That's how you get to the intellectual capital of your members. When you give them a chamber, you give them an environment where they can agree, disagree, mediate, go forward, etc. I think that's a very strong message from both of you. And another question about your projects. So it's really, I asked this question. Fast forward, I guess. Where are your initiatives today? You know, your projects that you just mentioned, Dr. Alaa and Aebhric, and in hindsight, and hindsight is always great looking back, what might you have done different, maybe to achieve even better results than you actually achieved? Is there anything in particular you would have done different or lessons you may have learned from the experience?
Yes and no.
Yes,
because there is always room for improvement. But let's decide that it's always quality versus time. And sometimes you have to take actions immediately. Sometimes you don't have the resources. For example, 2011, we didn't have communication. Telephone lines were cut. So you were acting based on the circumstances that you're working in. But looking forwards, what we're doing today is very simply, for example, as Union of Euro-Mediterranean Chambers, we are doing training programs on advocacy. And this training programs, it's not only training chambers how to advocate better, but actually what's more important is they're doing what we're doing right now. We're exchanging experiences between the different chambers. Thanks to the European Union who's supporting this. This is a program that's going on for the past 3 years and will carry on for the next 5 years. So there is a lot. But what I can summarize is the difference between chambers and other organizations is we deliver, others don't. And we learn from our experience because we have a tradition. The youngest chamber will be half a century. So we're talking about experience, and we're major part of a network where, yes, we can have done a lot better if the time permitted us to communicate with our partners, other chambers, ask, get the answer, adapt it to the local context, and implement.
Yeah, well, I think that you're halfway to winning that battle. If we all understand, we always need to learn. We always need to change. We always need to take on the new ideas. And Aebhric, back to you on what might you have done different, if anything?
Oh, I'm in the yes and no camp as well, because if we were to delay until everything was perfect, we'd never got anything done. So you need to act. I think what I learned from Activating Dublin and what we've carried forward is so the chamber is a privately funded body, so we don't have huge resources. Government has the big stick in terms of funding or legislation. So we see ourselves as being the innovator. We need to pilot new things, tease out new ideas, and then say, look, here's the case, here's the evidence. You now need to go and do this. And we need to do that. And that means your brand needs to be trusted. Your reputation needs to be credible, and it needs to be evidence-based. So Activating Dublin, as I say, was in response to a crisis. It piloted a whole range of initiatives that, by the way, some succeeded. I've highlighted those, but not everything succeeded, but that's okay. And I think one of the things that is important in that collaboration with government is that it's okay to fail too, as long as you act, you know? So not every initiative was mainstreamed. Right now, we've taken those relationships, and I mentioned that sustainability training we're doing. The pilot that we ran on sustainability, where we trained a whole bunch of companies to begin to think and act in terms of a sustainable manner. That program has been adopted and mainstreamed by government in terms of a national program. So that's the next level. That's the next step for us, is to make sure and keep those relationships going. And we see our space as being the innovator, and let government, you know, present them with the evidence. And in this, for example, in that project, again, we had good collaboration with the thought leader in that space in one of the leading banks in Ireland, AIB, and also with good consulting work that kind of says independent of us to audit us, to make sure it's not just us saying it. Here's another guy who can say and verify this is correct.
Wonderful. Well, you're both displaying amazing thought leadership on this webinar today, and Dr. Alaa highlighting the importance of being resourceful. And Aebhric, I think your advice there is to move, to get something underway, because if you're going to wait till everything is lined up, nothing ever really gets done. It's to get underway and get the projects moving. And I sense that very strongly coming from both of you. And again, coming in from our viewers here, something we touched on, but there's a question. In your experience of advocating for business, you know, what has changed? Are we still using similar methods, tools of engagement with stakeholders, partners, and government? And well, I think for translating, what is the future for advocacy? You know, is there a future for what we're doing in this area? Dr. Alaa.
Yes, there is a future. This is a never-ending story. Let's be realistic. However, the tools are different. Like mentioned earlier, that you always, the trick is to balance between what you do above the table and what you do under the table. What are the instruments you're using? Like I mentioned, if you can't win them, join them. So we decided to join them as a tool to outreach. We do surveys. On the average, we have 250,000 participants in our surveys. So we come with scientifically based statistics on the opinion. We do our homework properly. So when we present it to the decision makers, we tell them the train is coming to hit you, and we see it coming from far, and here is the evidence. And by the way, here is the solution, and you go announce it. So we come to them with solutions. Okay.
Aebhric, is there still a future for
I think it's an essential advocacy is okay. I do, this is my job as well, but it's companies meet together to learn what's going on in their business and each other's business, and then they say, wouldn't it be better if we could fix that over there, or we could make this better. So it's why people meet. It's what distinguishes us from meeting in a golf club or anywhere else, is a common purpose. And I think that common purpose is really important, because it's what I think a lot of members like to be part of a vision outside. They have obviously a company vision, but they want to be part of a vision for the city in which they operate. And I think what's changed, technology changes and lots of things change. Relationships, I think, are always there, are always important. But I think time is a thing that's changed. Actually, people have less time. We're all working harder, and there's so many different interfaces now. It's very hard to find the time. So if I do meet with somebody, to echo what Dr. Alaa said, if I'm lobbying, I try and make sure I don't ring them every day. I'm not bothering them when I don't need to. We try and get a seat at the table through the chamber or through our national body to make sure we're in there representing our views. But also don't abuse it. If I don't need to be ringing you or badgering you, I don't sweat the small stuff. I come along with the big pieces when you need to hear it, and that way, time isn't wasted. And I think that's the big change. People are just busy.
People are just busy. And actually, you probably didn't observe it, but both of you used the same word in different contexts during our conversation, and that was the word outreach. You both used the word outreach in our discussion. And, I myself feel very strongly that definitely at these times of social distancing, this is the time we need outreach more than ever in this challenged world of ours, whether it's within our chambers, our own organizations, or whether it is globally. And getting near the end of our conversation, something I want to go back to, we briefly mentioned startups earlier, okay? And everyone is talking about startups, entrepreneurs, SMEs, micro SMEs. It's what everyone's talking of. But for instance, if we look at startups, startups are often not members of the chambers, and the startup tends not to engage with membership organizations, and they try to find their own way, successfully or unsuccessfully. How can we engage more with, let's say, the startup, the entrepreneur, and bring them into our network to empower them and help them move forward? Because they're creating the economic activity right now. Dr. Alaa.
First, to us, it's not CSR. It is part of our marketing drive, because these startups are the future members. So to us, it's important to support them, make them understand what chambers are, and provide all the services that they might need. So to us, it's core business. And besides advocating to make life easier for them, because life is not easy for a startup, especially accessing finance and all these things, we have a number of projects, regional projects with the European Union, about 180 million euros, that creating incubators, supporting startups, doing rallies and competitions, blending them together, getting them together in what we as chambers are, getting them in a chamber of startups to cooperate. And we believe that comprehensiveness through complementarity really works. We believe in what we call co-opetition. So we bring them to co-opete together and create bigger structures. And then voila, there are members paying dues and taking services.
Okay, you help them take their first steps, and then they graduate into becoming members. That's a wonderful practice. Aebhric, getting back to you, just to let you know, many years ago, I did an entrepreneur program with the Dublin Institute of Technology to start a business. Now, I didn't start the business, but the skills I learned have helped me in my broader career. So how are you engaging with the startups and helping them evolve? Startups.
Well, startups often don't have funding, so they don't necessarily have the resources to join a chamber. So sometimes we provide them with cheaper access or discounted access. We often collaborate with universities in setting up sort of innovation areas or hubs. There's one at the moment in Trinity College, which is being established, which is a major city centre higher educational institute. And the idea is the environment around which, this is the sweet spot, I think, for us anyway, so whereby the startups have a nice environment supported by education, supported by the businesses surrounding them. And I think that's the place. Dr. Alaa mentioned a good point. You've got to show people lead them sometimes to show them what they need. I think startups sometimes are so focused on their initial offering and their business, they're internally focused. But when they get to that next level where they need to build relations with other businesses, to sell, to learn from others, that's where we come in. So you've got to grow them and show them that potential. Indeed, one of our future presidents is a startup. So we take it very seriously in that,
Sure.
you know, we'll highlight that person and say, look, here, this could be you too. This is how you can grow and scale your business.
Well, Aebhric, I really like that line you had there. We grow them and show them. Like, what more can you do? That's absolutely wonderful. So with that, a wonderful discussion, wonderful dialogue. I learned a huge amount. Dr. Alaa Ezz, Secretary General, Federation of Egyptian Chamber of Commerce. Aebhric McGibney, Director of Public and International Affairs, Dublin Chamber of Commerce. Wonderful. Looking forward to seeing you in Dubai for the 12th World Chambers Commerce. 23-25 November. And Leila, I think I'll pass back to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Vincent. Thank you, Aebhric. Thank you, Dr. Alaa. Fantastic discussion this afternoon, and we hope everybody has enjoyed it. But please, the discussion does not stop here. You must all join us in Dubai where we can carry on these discussions. And something that both of our panelists today have participated in, and something that we are pushing to encourage all chambers of commerce to get involved in, is the World Chambers Congress competition. One of our colleagues will be posting a link in the chat from ICC to get involved. Send through your applications. There's still an opportunity. The deadline is still open. So please get involved. At the end of the day, the only way we can better ourselves and improve ourselves is to learn from our peers, and to submit to this competition so that we can all drive towards building a stronger ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Again, we really do hope you've enjoyed the session. We'd love to hear your feedback. In the top right-hand corner of your screen, there is an icon where you're able to complete a very short survey. That's the only way we can do things better and bring you the right content that's going to help you. So please participate in the survey before you leave. Another comment before you leave also is, if you've made any notes during the webinar using this platform, don't forget to export them to your emails, which can be done as well. Before we all leave this afternoon, we'd like to show you a very short video which gives you a sneak preview of what we can all expect to see here in Dubai at the 12th World Chambers Congress. And again, thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you again at the next Chambers Connect series, which will be communicated to you shortly. Stay safe, take care, God bless. Thank you.